Hey there everyone, AJ back again for the Mighty Gluestick channel. I make videos about Dungeons & Dragons lore full time and have a collection of hundreds of monster ecology and strategy videos on my channel. If you like what I do, please consider subscribing as I upload at least twice a week. Take another look at this map. We have Faerun, Zakhara, Karatua and the Horde lands, and let's be honest, not many of us know a whole lot about 3 out of those 4 regions. That is fine really, it is a perfect reflection of the fact that most of the characters on the world of Toril have very little idea of what is on the far side of their own continent. Today I'm going to talk about the Yakfolk because I have had a fair few viewer requests to talk about them, and also because they are very much a large part of the story of the dwarves who migrated from the Yahamel mountain region down into Karatua and Zakhara. Also, they pop up as a race of note when playing through the campaign called Storm King's Thunder. First things first, the Yakfolk are an evil race, no bones about it. They are a threat to most other civilized races on Toril. Even I was a bit shocked as I researched them for this video how extensive this threat really is. Also, it gives me a perfect opportunity to talk about another viewer requested creature, the Task Genies, or just sort of an introduction to where they come from, and also what makes the Earth Elemental Genies, the Tao, different from any other genie. It's a juicy detail, that one I don't think that's been talked about before, so more on that in a little while. But let's begin with a study of the Yakfolk of Zakhara. Settle back, grab yourself a beverage, because this is going to get deeply nerdy. Their race call themselves the Yikaria. They are large humanoids, usually around or just over 8 feet tall. They have the head of a yak with curved horns and quite a dour and sullen expression with downturned mouths and dark, piercing eyes. Their body is covered with thick fur, and it doesn't have to be dark. Sometimes there are examples of albinos and ones with blonde fur. They have hooved feet that look a lot like a yak version of a minotaur, except they never grow a tail. They have hands with 5 digits and prefer to wear well-crafted robes with fabrics of the highest quality, often with decorative plates of enamelled metal, etched hard leather, or carved wood with inlaid precious stones. They prefer to have masterwork staff with them, usually enchanted, and are usually accompanied by at least one slave. The Yikaria have their own language and reside in enclave villages on high mountain plateaus, remote glacial valleys, and desert oases. They have an orderly arrangement of round buildings similar to yurts, immaculate gardens and pathways, wind chimes, water wheels, impressive stonework sculptures, and all of the buildings and furnishings are very well made, durable, and decorated with a wealth of mineral treasures from gold and silver to gems and semi-precious stones. They have a seemingly idyllic village life. From most appearances, the Yikaria go about their business spending long hours studying manuscripts on all sorts of topics that they've acquired from across the realms. They study and practice arcane arts and engage in the worship of their deity at least once or twice a day, always attended by a few of the many other intelligent races who diligently care for their every need. Groups of young Yikaria move around between buildings in small groups as they study together. As one ventures deeper into the heart of the World Pillar Mountains, the settlements of Yikaria become larger and larger, often full cities of up to 5,000 or 6,000 Yikaria, and many times that number in slaves can be found, as they have a well-established empire in this region. Here the buildings have a similar orderly and picturesque arrangement, but they are made of exotic stones brought directly from the elemental plane of Earth, and the impressive sheer walls that fortify and protect these cities are made from a stone with a surface so slick it is like it is covered in oil. The stone itself is as strong as solid cast iron. The Yikaria males and females are almost exactly alike, though those familiar with the race will be able to tell that the females are generally a bit smaller, and closer familiarity will reveal that the females and males occupy exactly the same roles in their culture. So much so that once children are weaned, they are immediately placed into communal creche groups where they are raised together without any further interaction with their parents beyond normal day-to-day affairs as with any other adult. They are governed and all play some role in the theocracy that is the basis of their society. However, it is thoroughly evil, and beyond the idyllic veneer, this is a race of cold-hearted, merciless murderers. The symbol of their god is clearly displayed all over the place. It looks like a blank mask with yak horns. This is the faceless god of the Yikaria. only known as the Forgotten God to anyone who is an outsider, which is basically any non-Yikaria. They know the name of their god, but they never share it. Unlike many other theocratic cultures, this is a very active god who appoints the ruling elite of their empire. It is the faceless god who selects the 7 sages, who are the regional governors of the 8 provinces that make up their empire, stretching from the World Pillar Mountains to the large area of northeast Zakhara. They are considered to be the sons and daughters of their god and rule from fabulous castles that house the region's own military force. They have a tradition of secrecy in keeping with their religion, never revealing their true identity. They have near total power in their province and over their military, answering only to the Lotus Emperor, who is in the 8th province called the Gate of Heaven, in the capital city of Nathong. When travelling to meet with any of the other sages, they fly under cover of darkness on the backs of giant rocks. The power and wealth of the provinces flows into Nathong as the sages tithe 1/5 of their income each year. Those who fail to do so get murdered horribly. The heart of the empire is impressive. Although the province doesn't cover as much physical territory, it has the largest population. Nathong rises high above the Enlightened Ring Plateau, which should be an extreme environment at such high altitude, but thanks to the direct power of the faceless god, the whole region has tolerable temperatures and a much longer growing season than should naturally exist here. Here, the single mountain pass leads to the Gate of Heaven, guarded by 900 elite faceless guards, and beyond the thronging populace and rising terraces of the city fortress, the towering Lotus Court, where the most powerful lords of the empire, known as the Lords of the 9 Heavens, jostle to advise and influence the Emperor of the Lotus Throne, chosen by the faceless god himself to rule over all for 20 years, before being offered as a sacrifice and replaced by a younger Yikarian, chosen once more by the faceless god. I have to say, unless the circumstances are extraordinary, the chances of any non-Yikarian seeing this city and surviving are slim to none, which will be more understandable in a moment. The best chance of interacting with this race reasonably safely is via trade in the port of Lipo, a city located along the coast of the Pearl Bay. This is the Sun's Eye province, ruled over by the Coral Governor. This region gets a lot of pilgrims of the faceless god who travel through there to reach the shrine of the Jade Monolith. Well, unless they are Yikarian, they don't get to step foot in the shrine. They just ask very nicely for one of the Yakfolk to plead to the faceless god for them. It seems crazy that any other race would pray to the faceless god, but when you see the power and splendour of the Yikarian Empire, it's not so mysterious why others would want to seek similar divine favour. Not that they're ever going to get it. The Yikarian navy is small but quite powerful along the coast. Lipo is quite tiny compared to any of the port cities along the Sword Coast, for instance, and you can only dock up to 5 ships at a time along their port. This is the only place where outsiders can interact and trade with the Yikarian Empire reasonably safely, and the primary form of trade in Lipo is slaves, with a near constant influx of slaver ships from all over the Great Sea and beyond. Because this is where they get the absolute best prices for their captives, there is a very horrible reason why the Yikarian Empire needs a constant influx of slaves. The faceless god is actually a shaitan who rose to divine levels of power long ago. Not yet a true god, but an immortal demigod or demi-power. The faceless god still has enormous power and grants clerical magic to its faithful. Now here's something interesting for you. Dao, the earth genies, are the only genies who have a totally different name than what they are called in Arabic folklore. The Marid, Genie, and Efriti are almost exactly what they were originally called, and the reason why the Dao got a name change? The word shaitan originates from the Hebrew Satan, the accuser or adversary. However, Arabic etymology makes it mean distant or astray, taking a theological connotation designating the creature distant from divine mercy. So in pre-Islamic Arabia, the term was used to designate an evil spirit, which later became the demon or devil under the influence of Islam. Personally, I think Shaitan is a much better name for the Earth Genies than Dao. As mentioned, the Yakfolk are evil, and so is their religion. They sacrifice slaves to the faceless god every single day, at least 4 slaves. One is given to fire, burned alive, one is given to air, thrown off a cliff, one is given to water, drowned, and one is given to the earth, buried alive. This is no secret to the slaves, and you would think that they would instantly revolt and overthrow the empire, but there are insidious ways the Yikarians keep them under their control. More on that in a moment. It is believed by most Yikarians and many scholars that they are the offspring of the faceless god. It is also believed that the divine deity thrives on the success of the Yikaria in building their empire and is increasingly taking control of the rest of Zakhara. In particular, upon all those gruesome sacrifices performed by this faithful every single day. This fanatical and debased faith is rewarded handsomely, though, with powers provided by their god to the entire Yikarian race. Long ago, as mentioned, the faceless god rose to enormous power in the inner planes and came to direct conflict with the ruler of all earth genies, and won, extracting a bargain from the ruler for 1001 years. All Earth Genies would be obligated to obey every command of the Yikaria, and so, for centuries, the Empire has thrived on this ability to command the Shaitan, the Tao. They are not foolish as to think this boon will last forever, or not have any serious consequences when the 1001 years are over. So in that time, they have created a kind of a sub-race of genies who have, I guess you call it, gone native to the prime material plane, called the tasked genies. The Yakfolk have actually bred a specific subclass of the tasked genies who are devoted to mining. They call them mining genies, or minor genies. There has also been a lot of interbreeding with genies in Zakhara. The elemental wizards, known as the Sha'ir, are said to have an elemental ancestry, sort of like a sorceress power that they combine with spellcasting and alliances with true genies. Zakhara has a very complex relationship with genies, no doubt a good subject for future videos. So, the Yikaria, which means the lucky chosen in their language, are a justifiably feared race across Zakhara, the Yehimils and the Karatur, as well as the southeastern coast of Faerun, though thankfully they don't seem interested in a massive invasion of foreign lands. For all their learning and culture, Yakfolk are sadistic and totalitarian overlords. They care for their hapless subjects only to the extent that a live slave is more useful than a dead one. They have no interest in other cultures other than to learn all that they know and then destroy them. They see all other races as beneath them, and even within their own society they have no concept of family or community loyalty. They just serve their religion and their race. They are cold, unfeeling, completely without sentiment, and the fact that they inflict torture and cruelty without any sort of personal feeling behind it kind of makes them even more evil, because they do these things out of a sense of the rightness of them doing it. Slaves must be sacrificed for the greater good of their race, therefore there must be a selection process, and it's only logical that those slaves who are disloyal, disobedient, or weak are picked out and murdered every single day. To this end, the Yikarians have a supernatural trait that they use to infiltrate and ferret out those slaves who are the best candidates. This trait is called skin crawling, which allows the Yikarian to touch another intelligent being and to magically crawl under another creature's skin, control its body and suppress its mind. The Yakfolk use this ability to spy on enemies, rob them, murder their leaders and kidnap their children. So your typical Yikarian warrior is a large monstrosity, neutral evil, wears leather armor for an armor class of 11, has 8d10 plus 16 or between 24 and 96 with an average of 60 hit points, a speed of 30 feet, 18 strength, constitution and wisdom of 15, charisma and intelligence of 14, dexterity of 11. They don't have dark vision, they have passive perception of 12, plus 4 to deception, which is important when they're disguising themselves as somebody else. They do speak common as well as their own language, count as a challenge rating 3, which seems high, but they have that possession ability that they use once in between a short or long rest. In 5th edition, it states that the Yakfolk attempts to magically possess a humanoid or giant. The Yakfolk must touch the target throughout a short rest, so at least 10 minutes, I think, or the attempt will fail if it fails to maintain that contact with them. At the end of the rest, the target must succeed on a DC 12 Constitution saving throw or be possessed by the Yakfolk, which disappears with everything it is carrying and wearing. That's not how it was in earlier editions, where the body of the Yakfolk would be vulnerable. In fact, killing the body of the Yakfolk while it was possessing somebody else would also kill the victim that they were possessing. Until the possession ends, the target is incapacitated, loses control of its body, its own body, and it's unaware of its surroundings. It basically goes into its safe space. The Yakfolk now controls the body and can't be targeted by any attack, spell, or other effect, but it retains its alignment, its intelligence, wisdom, and charisma scores, and its proficiencies. Otherwise, it uses the target's statistics, except the target's knowledge, class features, feats, and proficiencies. Again, that's a bit different because in earlier editions the Yakfolk did have access to everything the victim knew or knows. The possession lasts until either the body drops to 0 hit points, the Yakfolk ends the possession on an action, or the Yakfolk is forced out of the body by an effect such as a dispel evil and good spell. When the possession ends, the Yakfolk reappears in an unoccupied space within 5 feet of the body and is stunned until the end of its next turn. If the host body dies while it's possessed by the Yakfolk dies as well, and its body doesn't reappear. I guess there are a few Yakfolk bodies littered around the astral plane then. Other than that special power, the typical Yikarian warrior has 2 attack actions with either a great sword or a longbow, with a +6 to hit and 46 +4 slashing damage with the sword, or +2 to hit and 2d8 piercing damage with the bow. I guess they decided not to go with the lesser damage of a staff, or the fact that having a magical staff on every single warrior would overload the player characters with a bit of magical loot. The Yakfolk priest has a bit more formidable. Though I see they've restricted it to only divine spellcasting. In earlier editions, and in keeping with the lore, the Yakfolk commonly learn how to cast arcane magic, and there are no restrictions on their clergy learning arcane magic at all. In fact, it's almost mandatory. So lots of Eldritch Knights and cross-class cleric wizards. The priest listing is similar, has a armor class of 12 with hide armor. Hit points are lower by 8 points. Strength has a strength of 16, but a wisdom of 18. And they have medical training and is a 7th level spellcaster. Spell save DC is 14, +6 to hit with their magic. They have pretty standard selection of clerical spells. They can possess people, and they have the power to summon an earth elemental once per day. It says the Yakfolk summons an earth elemental. The summoned elemental appears in an unoccupied space within 60 feet of the summoner and acts as an ally of the summoner. It remains for 10 minutes until it dies or until its summoner dismisses it as an action. I'm glad that they went with that and not the ability to summon a genie, because again, that wouldn't be in keeping with the lore. They can only command them, not summon them. In combat, they have 2 attacks with their quarterstaff, and as I mentioned, you can absolutely beef this up with some enchantments on the staff. They are +5 to hit, inflicting 2d6 +3 bludgeoning damage, or 2d8 +3 bludgeoning damage if they're using that staff with both hands. As a race, they are vain creatures. They dislike getting dirty or having their fine clothing damaged or soiled. They wear a lot of jewellery and covet magic items, so feel free to scatter some wondrous items into the mix. They do not consider themselves in any way related to minotaurs and take great offence at those sort of slanderous slurs. They have a lifespan that averages 300 years, and they really dislike most dwarves because of the long history of conflict between their people, though they consider them to make excellent slaves. As you can imagine, they are frequently found in the elemental plane of Earth, where they deal with various other races, including the otherworldly Marashi, who have the body of a human, the wings and feet of a bird of prey, and the head of a jackal. A fairly large number of Marashi are employed by the Yakfolk in the World Pillar Mountains. And that, pretty much, is the Yakfolk, or the Yikarian Empire, and a good-sized chunk of the Lands of Fate, also known as Zakhara. I hope you enjoyed, and let me know in the comments if you want more information on the wider world of Toril. Please hit the like button if you got this far, subscribe if you like what I do, check out my Patreon for some exclusive content and all the full scripts for these videos, buy some merchandise, wear your geek with pride, and as always, thanks for listening, and I'll be back with more for you very soon.